The distant planet of Elysium 9 was a jewel in the vast expanse of space. Its skies shimmered with twin suns, casting golden light over rolling green hills and crystal-clear lakes. The human colony here was a testament to resilience and ingenuity. Once a barren rock, it had been transformed into a thriving paradise. Towering cities of glass and steel stood alongside fields of crops, while children laughed and played in the streets. It was a place of hope, a symbol of what humanity could achieve when united. At the heart of the colony stood Commander Elena Reyes, a woman known for her sharp mind and unshakable determination. She had led the colony through countless challenges, harsh storms, resource shortages, and even the occasional alien scavenger. But today, as she stood on the observation deck of the colony's central tower, she felt a strange unease. The skies were clear, the air was calm, and yet something felt off. "Commander," a voice called from behind her. It was Dr. Kavi Patel, the colony's chief scientist. He was holding a data pad, his face pale. "We've detected an anomaly in the outer rim, a massive energy signature moving fast." Elena turned, her dark eyes narrowing. "How massive?" "Bigger than anything we've ever seen," Kavi replied, his voice trembling. "It's a fleet, and it's heading straight for us." The words hummed in the air like a storm cloud. Elena quickly activated the colony's communication system, her voice echoing across every screen and speaker. "Attention, all citizens. This is Commander Reyes. We have an incoming threat. Please remain calm and follow emergency protocols." The colony buzzed with activity as people scrambled to secure their homes and gather supplies. Elena's team assembled in the command center, a room filled with holographic maps and blinking lights. On the main screen, the energy signature grew larger and larger. "Can we identify them?" Elena asked, her eyes fixed on the screen. "Not yet," Kavi said, typing furiously. "But their technology is far beyond anything we've encountered. This isn't a Reiter group of scavengers. This is an empire." The words sent a chill through the room. Humanity had faced many challenges in its journey to the stars, but an empire, that was something else entirely. Minutes later, the fleet arrived. Massive ships, sleek and menacing, emerged from the darkness of space. They blocked out the twin suns, casting the colony in shadow. The largest ship, a monstrous vessel bristling with weapons, descended until it hovered just above the colony's atmosphere. A holographic message appeared on every screen in the colony. The figure that appeared was tall and imposing, clad in dark armor. His eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and his voice was cold and commanding. "People of Elysium 9, he began. "I am Emperor Zorath, ruler of the Galactic Empire. Your planet now belongs to us. Surrender, and you will be spared. Resist, and you will be destroyed." The message ended, leaving the colony in stunned silence. Elena clenched her fists, her mind racing. Surrender was not an option. She had fought too hard, sacrificed too much, to let this colony fall. But how could they possibly stand against such a force? As the command center buzzed with frantic activity, Kavi suddenly gasped. "Commander, we're receiving another signal. It's not from the Empire." Elena turned to him. "What is it?" "It's faint, but it's coming from deep space," Kavi said, his voice filled with wonder. "It's a warning, and it's addressed to us." The room fell silent as the signal played. It was a voice, ancient and echoing, speaking in a language no one recognized. But the translation software quickly decoded the message. "Beware the Empire. Seek the weapon. It is your only hope." Elena's heart pounded. A weapon? What weapon? And where could it be? Before she could ask, the ground shook violently. The Empire's ships had begun their descent, their weapons glowing with deadly energy. "Commander, what do we do?" one of her officers asked, panic in his voice. Elena took a deep breath, her eyes blazing with determination. "We fight, and we find that weapon." As the colony braced for the coming storm, the twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting the world into darkness. The calm was over. The storm had begun. The Galactic Empire's flagship, the Obsidian Wrath, loomed over Elysium 9 like a predator ready to strike. Inside its cavernous command center, Emperor Zorath sat on a throne of blackened steel, his glowing eyes scanning the holographic displays before him. The screens showed the human colony below, tiny, fragile, and utterly insignificant in his eyes. "Pathetic," Zorath muttered, his voice dripping with disdain. "They call themselves a civilization. They are nothing but insects crawling in the dirt." Beside him stood General Vera, his most trusted advisor. She was a tall, imposing figure with silver armor and a face as cold as the void of space. "Shall we destroy them now, my emperor?" she asked, her voice sharp and emotionless. Zorath leaned back, a cruel smile spreading across his face. "No, let them squirm. Let them feel the weight of their helplessness. Send the ultimatum." On the surface of Elysium 9, Commander Elena Reyes and her team watched as a new holographic message appeared. This time, it was General Vera who spoke. "Humans of Elysium 9, she began, her voice icy. "You have 1 hour to surrender. Lay down your weapons, kneel before the Galactic Empire, and you will be allowed to live as servants. Resist, and your colony will be reduced to ash." The message ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Elena's fists clenched at her sides. "Servants? Never," she growled. "Commander, we can't find them," one of her officers said, his voice trembling. "Their ships outnumber us 10 to 1. Their weapons, we don't stand a chance." Elena turned to him, her eyes blazing. "We don't have a choice. If we surrender, we lose everything. Our freedom, our home, our future. We fight, or we die trying." As the colony prepared for battle, Kavi rushed into the command center, his face flushed with excitement. "Commander, I've decoded more of the ancient signal. It's a map to the weapon." Elena's heart leaped. "Where is it?" "On a nearby planet," Kavi said, pulling up a holographic star map. "It's called Xerxes 7, but there's a problem. The planet is unstable, constant storms, volcanic activity, and the Empire is already heading there." Elena's mind raced. If the Empire reached the weapon first, it would mean the end of humanity. But if they could get there first? "Assemble a team," she ordered. "Our best pilots, soldiers, and scientists. We're going to Xerxes 7. "But Commander," Kavi said, his voice filled with worry, "the journey is dangerous, and the planet is even worse. If we go, we might not come back." Elena placed a hand on his shoulder. "If we don't go, none of us will survive. This is our only chance." As the team prepared for the mission, the Empire's fleet began to move. Ships descended toward the colony, their weapons glowing with deadly energy. The hour was almost up. Elena stood at the edge of the colony's landing pad, watching as her team boarded a small, fast ship called the Starfire. She turned to Kavi, who was staying behind to coordinate the colony's defenses. "Hold them off as long as you can," she said. "We'll be back with the weapon." Kavi nodded, though his eyes were filled with fear. "Good luck, Commander." As the Starfire lifted off, the Empire's ships opened fire. Blasts of energy rained down on the colony, shaking the ground and lighting up the sky. Elena watched through the ship's window as her home was engulfed in flames. "We'll make them pay for this," she whispered, her voice filled with determination. The Starfire shot into the stars, leaving the burning colony behind. The race for the weapon had begun. The Starfire hurtled through the void of space, its engines roaring as it raced towards Xerxes 7. Inside the ship, the atmosphere was tense. Commander Elena Reyes sat in the cockpit, her eyes fixed on the swirling storm clouds of the planet ahead. Behind her, the crew worked frantically to prepare for what lay ahead. "We're approaching the planet's atmosphere," said Lieutenant Marcus Cole, the ship's pilot. His hands moved swiftly over the controls, his face a mask of concentration. "Brace yourselves, this is going to be rough." The Starfire shuddered as it entered Xerxes 7's atmosphere. Outside, the sky was a chaotic mix of black clouds, lightning, and rivers of molten lava. The planet was a nightmare, a place of constant storms and volcanic eruptions. "This place is a death trap," muttered Dr. Amara Singh, the team's geologist. She stared at the scanners, her brow furrowed. "The ground is unstable, and the storms are off the charts. One wrong move, and we're done for." "We don't have a choice," Elena said firmly. "The weapon is here, and we need to find it before the Empire does." The ship descended toward the surface, dodging lightning bolts and ash clouds. Finally, they landed in a rocky valley surrounded by towering cliffs. The team stepped out, their suits protecting them from the toxic air and scorching heat. "According to the map, the weapon is in those ruins," Kavi said, pointing to a massive structure in the distance. It was an ancient temple, half buried in ash and surrounded by rivers of lava. "Let's move," Elena ordered. "Stay close and watch your step." The team made their way toward the temple, their progress slow and treacherous. The ground shook with every step, and the air was filled with the roar of thunder and the hiss of molten rock. As they reached the temple, they found the entrance blocked by a massive stone door covered in strange symbols. "Can you open it?" Elena asked, turning to Kavi. He studied the symbols, his eyes narrowing. "It's a puzzle. Give me a minute." As Kavi worked, the ground shook violently, and a loud rumble filled the air. Elena turned to see a massive wave of lava flowing toward them. Kavi, hurry, she shouted. Almost there, he muttered, his hands moving quickly over the symbols. Finally, the door slid open with a loud groan. Go, go, go! Alina yelled, pushing the team inside just as the lava reached the temple. The interior of the temple was dark and eerie, with walls covered in ancient carvings. The air was thick with dust, and the only sound was the distant rumble of the storm outside. This way, Kavi said, leading the team down a narrow passage. As they moved deeper into the temple, they began to hear strange noises, whispers, clicks, and the sound of something moving in the shadows. What is that? Marcus asked, his hand hovering over his weapon. I don't know, Alina said, her voice low, but stay alert. Finally, they reached a large chamber at the heart of the temple. In the center of the room was a massive pedestal, and on top of it was the weapon. But it wasn't what they expected. The weapon wasn't a machine or a device. It was alive. A massive, glowing creature floated above the pedestal, its body pulsing with energy. It had no eyes, no mouth, just a swirling mass of light and shadow. What is that? Amara whispered, her voice filled with awe. Before anyone could answer, the ground shook again and the sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the temple. Alina turned to see a group of Empire soldiers entering the chamber, their weapons drawn. At the front was General Vera, her silver armor gleaming in the dim light. Well, well, Vera said, a cruel smile on her face. It seems we're not the only ones looking for the weapon. Alina stepped forward, her eyes blazing. You're not taking it. Vera laughed. And how do you plan to stop us? The creature on the pedestal began to glow brighter, its energy filling the room. The air crackled with power, and the walls of the temple began to shake. What's happening? Marcus asked, his voice filled with panic. I think it's waking up, Kavi said, his eyes wide with fear. The creature let out a deafening roar, and the chamber was filled with blinding light. The chamber was engulfed in blinding light as the creature roared, its energy pulsing like a heartbeat. The ground shook violently, and the ancient temple groaned under the strain. Commander Alina Reyes shielded her eyes, her mind racing. This was no ordinary weapon. It was something far more powerful, far more dangerous. Fall back. Alina shouted, her voice barely audible over the creature's deafening cries. The team scrambled to retreat, but the Empire soldiers stood their ground. General Vera raised her hand, signaling her troops to hold their positions. Her cold, calculating eyes were fixed on the creature, a mix of awe and greed in her expression. Do you see this? Vera said, her voice filled with triumph. This is the power we came for. With this, the Empire will be unstoppable. The creature's glow intensified and a wave of energy burst from its core, knocking everyone off their feet. Alina hit the ground hard, her ears ringing. She looked up to see the creature floating higher, its form shifting and expanding. It's evolving, Kavi said, his voice trembling. It's reacting to our presence. We need to get off this planet, Marcus said, his hands gripping the controls tightly. The storms are getting worse and the Empire's fleet is still out there. Alina nodded, her mind racing. Set a course for Elysium 9. We need to warn the colony and prepare for the Empire's next move. As the Starfire broke through the atmosphere and entered the cold void of space, the team breathed a collective sigh of relief. But the relief was short-lived. On the ship's scanners, a massive energy signature appeared, a fleet of Empire ships, blocking their path. They're here, Marcus said, his voice grim. Alina clenched her fists. Of course they are. They're not going to let us leave with Aether. Aether's voice echoed through the ship, calm but commanding. I will handle this. Before anyone could respond, Aether shot forward, its glowing form expanding until it was as large as one of the Empire's ships. The Empire fleet opened fire, their weapons lighting up the darkness of space. But Aether absorbed the blasts effortlessly, its energy growing brighter with each attack. What is it doing? Amara asked, her voice filled with awe. It's fighting back, Kavi said, his eyes wide as he watched the scanners. Aether unleashed a wave of energy, sweeping through the Empire fleet like a tidal wave. Ships were torn apart, their hulls crumpling like paper. The Empire's forces scattered, their formation breaking under the sheer power of the ancient being. That's incredible, Marcus whispered. But Alina's expression was grim. This isn't over. The Empire won't stop until they have Aether. We need to get back to Elysium 9 and prepare for their next attack. As the Starfire flew past the wreckage of the Empire fleet, Aether returned to its smaller form and rejoined the ship. Its glow was dimmer now, as if the battle had drained its energy. Are you okay? Alina asked, her voice filled with concern. I am tired, Aether admitted. Using my power takes a toll. I will need time to recover. Alina nodded. We'll protect you. Just hang on a little longer. When the Starfire finally reached Elysium 9, the colony was in chaos. The Empire's initial attack had left much of the colony in ruins, and the survivors were struggling to rebuild. Alina's heart ached as she saw the damage, but she knew there was no time to grieve. We need to evacuate, she said, her voice firm. The Empire will come back, and when they do, we need to be ready. Kavi shook his head. We can't just leave. This is our home. It won't be our home for much longer if we stay, Alina replied. We need to regroup and come up with a plan. Aether is our only hope, but we can't risk losing it to the Empire. As the colony began to evacuate, Alina gathered her team in the command center. Aether floated in the center of the room, its glow flickering weakly. We need to find a way to stop the Empire for good, Alina said. Aether, do you know how we can do that? Aether's voice was soft but steady. The Empire's power comes from their flagship, the Obsidian Wrath. Destroy it, and their fleet will fall. Then that's our target, Alina said, her eyes blazing with determination. We'll take the fight to them. But before they could make a plan, the alarms blared. The scanners showed a massive energy signature approaching, a fleet even larger than the one they had faced before. They're here, Marcus said, his voice filled with dread. Alina turned to Aether. Can you fight? Aether's glow brightened slightly. I will do what I must, but this will be my last stand. Alina nodded, her heart heavy but resolute. Then let's finish this. The skies above Elysium 9 were filled with the ominous hum of Empire ships. The Obsidian Wrath, Emperor Zoroth's flagship, loomed at the center of the fleet like a dark star. Its weapons glowed with deadly energy, ready to unleash destruction upon the colony below. Commander Alina Reyes stood on the command center's observation deck, her eyes fixed on the approaching fleet. Beside her, Aether floated, its glow flickering weakly. The ancient being had used much of its energy in the previous battle, and its form seemed smaller, dimmer. This is it, Alina said, her voice steady despite the fear in her heart. We make our stand here. Her team gathered around her, their faces grim but determined. Marcus, Amara, Kavi, and the rest of the colony's defenders stood ready, their weapons in hand. They knew the odds were against them, but they also knew they had no choice. Aether, Alina said, turning to the glowing being. Can you do this? Aether's voice was soft but resolute. I will give everything I have, but I cannot promise victory. Alina nodded. Then we'll fight with you to the end. As the Empire fleet descended, the colony's defenses sprang into action. Turrets fired into the sky and small fighter ships launched to engage the enemy, but the Empire's forces were overwhelming. Ship after ship fell and the turrets were quickly destroyed. We're not going to hold them all for long, Marcus said, his voice filled with frustration. We don't need to, Alina replied. We just need to buy Aether enough time. Aether rose into the air, its glow intensifying as it prepared to unleash its power. The Empire ships opened fire, their weapons lighting up the sky. But Aether absorbed the blasts, its energy growing brighter with each attack. Now, Alina shouted. Aether released a massive wave of energy, sweeping through the Empire fleet like a storm. Ships were torn apart, their hulls shattering under the force. But the Obsidian Wrath remained, its shields holding strong. Emperor Zoroth's voice echoed across the battlefield, cold and mocking. You think you can defeat me with this thing? I am the Empire. I am eternal. Aether's glow dimmed as it turned to Alina. I cannot destroy the flagship alone. I need your help. What can we do? Alina asked, her voice filled with desperation. The flagship's power core is vulnerable, Aether explained. If you can reach it, you can disable the ship. Alina turned to her team. You heard it. We're going in. The team boarded a small fast ship and flew toward the Obsidian Wrath, dodging enemy fire as they went. Aether flew alongside them, using its energy to shield the ship from attacks. When they reached the flagship, they docked in a hidden hangar and made their way to the power core. The ship was filled with Empire soldiers, but Alina and her team fought their way through, their determination unwavering. Finally, they reached the power core, a massive glowing sphere at the heart of the ship. This is it, Kavi said, his voice filled with awe. If we destroy this, the ship goes down. Then let's do it, Alina said, her eyes blazing with determination. But before they could act, Emperor Zoroth appeared, flanked by a group of elite soldiers. You think you can defeat me? Zoroth sneered. You are nothing but insects. Alina stepped forward, her weapon raised. We're not afraid of you. Zoroth laughed. Then you are fools. Aether's voice echoed through the room. Alina now. Elena didn't hesitate. She fired her weapon at the power core, and the room was filled with blinding light. The power core of the Obsidian Wrath exploded in a blinding flash of light, sending shockwaves through the massive flagship. Alarms blared, and the ship's systems began to fail. Emperor Zorath stumbled, his cold confidence shattered as he realized what was happening. "No!" he roared, his voice filled with rage and disbelief. "This cannot be." Commander Elena Reyes and her team were thrown to the ground by the force of the explosion. The air was thick with smoke and the acrid smell of burning metal. Elena struggled to her feet, her ears ringing and her vision blurred. She looked around, her heart pounding as she saw the chaos around her. "We need to get out of here," Marcus shouted, pulling Amara to her feet. Elena nodded, her eyes darting to the exit. But before they could move, Zorath stepped in front of them, his face twisted with fury. "You think you've won?" he spat, his glowing eyes narrowing. "You've only delayed the inevitable. The Empire will rise again." Elena raised her weapon, her hands steady despite the fear coursing through her. "Not if we have anything to say about it." Before Zorath could respond, a familiar voice echoed through the room. "It is over, Emperor." Aether floated into the chamber, its glow brighter than ever. The ancient being's energy filled the room, pushing back the smoke and darkness. Zorath stared at it, his face pale with fear. "You?" he whispered, his voice trembling. "Why you?" "I am the end," Aether replied, its voice calm, but filled with power. "And you have brought this upon yourself." With a wave of its energy, Aether sent Zorath flying across the room. He hit the wall with a sickening crunch and slumped to the ground, unmoving. Elena and her team stared in awe as Aether's glow began to pulse rhythmically, like a heartbeat. "The ship is collapsing," Aether said. "You must leave. Now." "What about you?" Elena asked, her voice filled with concern. "I will ensure the flagship is destroyed," Aether replied. "But this will be the end for me." Elena's heart ached. "No, there has to be another way." Aether's glow softened. "This is my purpose, Elena. To protect life, even at the cost of my own. Go, your people need you." Tears filled Elena's eyes, but she nodded. "Thank you," she whispered. The team turned and ran, their footsteps echoing through the crumbling ship. As they reached their small ship and took off, they looked back at the Obsidian Wrath. Aether's glow was visible through the cracks in the hull, growing brighter and brighter. And then, with a final blinding flash, the flagship exploded. The shockwave rocked their ship, and for a moment, everything was silent. When the light faded, the Obsidian Wrath was gone, reduced to nothing but debris. The Empire fleet, now leaderless, began to retreat, their ships scattering into the void of space. Elena and her team returned to Elysium 9, where the survivors of the colony were already celebrating. The Empire was defeated and the colony was safe. But as Elena stood on the observation deck, looking out at the stars, she felt a deep sense of loss. "We did it," Marcus said, his voice filled with relief. "We won." Elena nodded, but her eyes were distant. "We did, but we couldn't have done it without Aether." The team fell silent, their thoughts turning to the ancient being that had sacrificed itself to save them. "It's strange," Kavi said after a moment. "Aether was this incredible, powerful being, but in the end it was just like us. It cared. It fought for what was right." Elena smiled faintly. Maybe that's what makes something truly powerful, not strength or energy, but the will to protect others. As the twin suns of Elysium 9 rose over the horizon, casting golden light over the colony, Elena felt a sense of hope. The road ahead would not be easy, rebuilding the colony, preparing for any remnants of the Empire, but they had faced the impossible and emerged victorious. And somewhere in the vast expanse of the stars, Elena liked to think that Aether was still out there, watching over them.